Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of the Monsters Den. Today, in the dual co-captains chairs, we have Mr. Chris Allo and Mr. Rich Catino. Welcome, gentlemen, on this festive evening here, January the 5th, 2021.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers to birthday wishes.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks, everybody. Born on this date 55 years ago, myself. That's right. I will toast myself here.
And I brought the stripper. I brought the strippers.
Nice. I have one of those somewhere.
What's that?
I have one of those somewhere.
Yeah. I dug out the strippers. I dug out the strippers for this one.
Right.
There you go. Special occasion.
Right.
Special occasion. So tonight is all about zombie films. Although tonight is not about the Romero zombie films. Tonight is about maybe some of the lesser known zombie films that we've seen in cinematic history. So each one of us have picked out three favorites to talk a little bit about tonight and, continue on this kind of never-ending post-Halloween love of horror movies that we're going to do all year long. That's just what we're going to do here on the Monsters Den. So with that, Mr. Catino, I'm going to have you kick us off. Chris, you'll go after, and then myself, and we'll just keep going around until we talk about all three of our films.
All right. So since you mentioned Romero, I'll pick, I guess it's an unofficial sequel, right? To Night of the Living Dead, Return of the Living Dead. Because they do reference Night of the Living Dead in this movie. They reference the events, right?
That was co-written by John Russo, who wrote the original Night of the Living Dead with...
co-wrote it with George Romero.
Yeah, but do not tell George Romero that this is any kind of sequel because there's real bad blood there.
And the guy, what's his name again? You just said his name?
John Russo co-wrote the
John
movie.
Russo.
Well, to be honest, John Russo wrote the book, Return of the Living Dead, and then the options were bought, and then when they made the movie, they threw out most of his stuff anyway. But he still gets credit.
Well, going forward, when I was reading about this, he's able to use the Living Dead in his title,
right? And
then Romero is just using the Dead, so it was Dawn of the Dead,
right,
or Day of the Dead. So that was the difference between the two of them, how they were able to
split it. They kind of split it in half there.
Oh
yeah. Yeah, so this is, I guess, would you consider this a sequel, semi-unofficial sequel?
Myself, as a Romero fan, no.
Yeah.
This is, like a side step. This would be like when there's two versions of Saxon, and Oliver Dawson Saxon put out a record. Is that a Saxon record? Not really. So
good point.
You guys know exactly what I'm talking about.
I do know what you're talking about. A good film, nonetheless, though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes. A fun flick.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of good blood. It takes place years later after the original, and there's two guys that work at a medical supply place, and the guy that is the older guy, Frank, he takes Freddy down to the basement where they have the canisters. He tells them the story about the canisters that were moved from the Night of the Living Dead story and stored into this basement. So he hits it with his hand, and the gas comes out, and they get the gas, they inhale it, and they pass out. When they wake up, the zombie's out of the canister, and these guys start getting sick. And then they start figuring out that the gas that they inhaled it's starting to make them really sick, that they're going to be maybe dying. So they're when they come upstairs, when they're back in the room, they hear the dog, right? The dog panting, and they see the half dog that's laying on the ground, and they see it's moving. It's reanimated. So from there, then all these events start happening where they hear the one guy in the room banging on the door. So it's a reanimated body, and when they open the door, the body comes running out, and they have to kill it. They have to dismember it, and they can't figure out what they're going to do with the parts. So they take it to a guy that works at a morgue in the same vicinity where they are, and he decides to put it in the oh my god, what do you call that when you burn the body?
Crematorium or whatever.
Crematorium.
Yeah.
So they burn it, and all the gas, all the chemicals come out of the body, and it goes into the air, and that's when it goes into the rain. It's raining outside, and there's all the punk rockers that are there that are partying, and Freddy's girlfriend is friends with the punk rockers. So when it starts raining, the rain comes down and they're like, oh my God, it's, you know, burning our skin. What's going on? And that's when all the zombies start coming out of the ground. But that scene when they're in the graveyard has that famous scene with the girl with the red hair that gets completely naked and starts dancing.
Quickly, yep.
And then when all the zombies start rising out of the ground, that's when they play that famous song, Do You Want to Party?
45 Grave.
Rock song. Yeah. What were we going to say, Chris?
40. The band was 45 Grave. But yeah,
yes.
Linnea Quigley, when she gets naked, everybody thinks she's completely naked, but she's not. She's got a pelvic plastic piece in front of her, covering up her lady bits.
Uh-huh.
True story.
Okay. So can't really see it on this. I mean, it really hides it even well on the Blu-ray.
I mean, because there's really, you know, you're not supposed to see it. It's covered up. I mean, I've seen Return of the Living Dead like 3 or 4 times off film. I even ran it at my Hudson Horror Show, and even, you know, blown up on film off 35 millimeter film, projected. You know, you can almost see something, but
yeah, you can still see her boobs though.
Not really there, but she's a gorgeous lady, and that's one of the most memorable scenes in the movie.
You could still see her boobs, and you could still see her butt. Yeah. So after the zombies come out of the ground, then they start chasing after everybody. The kids, the punk rockers, they run into the lab. I mean the storage facility, and everybody's trapped inside, and they try to get in. Girlfriend of Freddy, what's her name?
Beverly.
Tina.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So when Tina's looking for Freddy, she goes into the basement, and that's where she finds the Tar Man zombie, which is one of the best zombies in the zombie movie. Very cool looking. That chases after her. That's one of the main, you know, zombies in the story. One of the more popular ones, I would say, because all the other ones, if you look at the zombies, they really don't have too much makeup going on. It's a lot of like mud on their faces and everything. Not too many zombies. You see the zombie makeups on mostly like close-up ones that you see. But all the other ones, I think
due to the budget constraints, they picked like a handful that they were going to give the full makeup to, and the rest, it's like, all right, we'll just throw some shit on them, and that's it. You know, that's all we got.
Or like the one skeleton hand that comes in and it grabs the guy and tries to pull him through.
Yep.
Yeah. So they spent the money on certain things, but they couldn't use it on everything. Yeah. Or now I don't remember if this is I guess it was a real person, the small guy with he had real short arms and legs zombie that was eating the brains of the ambulance driver.
Yes, I think they got a real amputee person.
I think so, because he didn't have actually all his real limbs. They were all really short. But he's sitting on the ground eating the one guy's brains that drove the ambulance.
I was wondering it was the same guy that they used in Poltergeist 2. That part with like the worm, and the worm turns into like a little person, and he's like running under the... Could be. I mean, how many of those guys are there?
Good question. I don't remember that one. All right.
They had a guy in Blood Freak who did the same thing. So
there you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's a lot of fun movie. Got a little bit of humor, a little unintentional humor to it.
Oh yeah. But, I mean, I think the humor was definitely intentional. It's definitely funny. I know, and you guys will relate to this. In 1985, I hated this movie.
Really?
Well, this was, to me, I was going to say, you guys will relate this. To me, this was Ozzy Sabbath syndrome. You know, I always hated that Ozzy seemed to go on tour right when Black Sabbath was, and they would play the same cities sometimes, you know, within a few days of one another. In 1985, I was dying to see Day of the Dead in a movie theater, but it was like 50 miles was the closest theater to my house, but Return of the Living Dead, which beat it to theaters,
same year,
got a massive release and played right by my house. But it was only the difference was one was R-rated and one was unrated. And one was a major studio for Return of the Living Dead, and Day of the Dead was United Film Distribution, which is, you know, Joe Bag of Donuts distributing. So, back then, you know, I hated it until I saw it, and then I kind of softened, and I've come to love it over the years.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
You know what's cool about this too? This zombie movie, Freddie and Frank, when they're dying, You don't see that in many zombie movies, the process of going through dying in rigor mortis and how you're slowly losing your skin color and all that stuff. This goes through that throughout the whole movie, and they're like screaming and yelling in pain as they're dying. That's really cool. I really like that about this one too. It's different.
Yeah. That's true. That is very, very different. And the whole punk rock thing with all the kids being punk rockers and the punk rock soundtrack, that also made it different.
Yeah. But you know what I noticed too when I was looking this up as well? Has there ever been an 80s horror movie that centered on a heavy metal theme for the music and like a soundtrack or anything where it's all metal, like this is all punk, or like metalheads were in the movie? This was punk. It's always like punk rockers. Even in Wonder Woman 84, they have punk rockers that are in the mall, but you don't really see metalheads. Has there ever been that in a movie like this?
I mean, not that I. Well, I mean, there's that Hard Rock Zombies. I mean, there's a couple.
Yeah.
You know, the band Sorcery did some shitty slasher movie, and there's some metal guys in there.
The one that Blackie and Wasp were in.
Oh no, that's fuck. I can't.
The Dungeon Master.
Yeah, that's Dungeon Master. But that's another. There's definitely metal out there.
A group of people though, and actors. I don't think there's ever been a group of metalheads.
Yeah, you might be right. Where the stars are, you know, metalheads and the whole soundtrack, and certainly not as, I wouldn't think, as high profile as this.
Yeah.
Pete,
which is weird because like at that time, it's not like punk rock was big.
Right.
Right. Although if I do remember, weren't half the cast of Night of the Demon metalheads? Pretty sure they were.
They could be.
Oh, maybe they were.
I don't remember the soundtrack for Night of the Demons, but my buddy Sean always reminds me that Night of the Demons 2 or 3 had like Morbid Angel in the soundtrack.
Yeah.
Really? Oh,
yeah,
and
I just watched Night of the Demons a couple months ago, and I remember like half the cast are all metalheads, and I'm pretty sure they played some metal on the soundtrack.
Yeah, they might have. It's been a while.
But there should have been more. I mean, to your point, Rich, there should have been more because the mid 80s, metal was everywhere, right? There was no punk going on there.
Yeah. There was one movie, though, where there was a co-star that was a metalhead in The Gate. The kid that had the sacrifice or sacrifice, whatever it was, on the back of the jacket with the Book of the Dead or something.
And in his room, he's got all there's like Venom and stuff. And there's that other movie, Trick or Treat, which has Skippy from Family Top, but he's a metalhead. Fastway did a soundtrack album.
Right. Ozzy's in it. Gene Simmons is in it.
Gene and Ozzy do guests. So I mean, has some stuff. I mean, there's that most recent book all about I think it's called Heavy Metal Movies, which I haven't read yet, but I heard it's great. But yeah, there is some stuff, but I can't think of a zombie movie. Right.
Yeah. All right, Chris, what do you got?
All right, so we'll go in chronological order. This one is from, I think it's 1974. And, when you're studying zombie movies, it's really interesting because, Night of the Living Dead came out in 1968. And sure, it was an influence, but it really wasn't until Dawn of the Dead that zombie movies really exploded. So from 68 to 78, there's not a ton of zombie movies. But this one, I think, is probably the best of that era, and it's The Living Dead at the Manchester Morgue, also known as Let Sleeping Corpses Lie, and it was released in America under the title Don't Open the Window, and it was an Italian-Spanish co-production directed by the name of George Grau, and he got the gig, and it was supposed to be, if I remember right, it was supposed to be like some kind of horror movie, and the producer was like, well listen, I really like Night of the Living Dead. And he's like, okay, yeah, me too. He's like, well, you're gonna make a movie, like make it like Night of the Living Dead. So it's basically heavily influenced by Night of the Living Dead. It's got really good special effects from Gennaro De Rossi, who would later go on to do the makeup effects for Fulci Zombie, which I'll talk about in a bit. And long story short, the plot is simple. Ray Lovelock, who's the lead in the film, he was also in the movie Autopsy. He's on a motorcycle. He has an accident with some girl. So he travels with her. She's looking for her sister, and they find the sister. The brother-in-law has turned into a zombie because, and this is interesting because they actually, unlike Night of the Living Dead, where they only sort of wink at maybe it's a down satellite, they have these people who have these big equipment, and they are using electronics to kill bugs. And it's kind of futuristic, and it's apparently killing the bugs, but it's also bringing the dead back to life as flesh-eating zombies. And of course, if you get bitten by them, then you come back as a flesh-eating zombie. And it's very atmospheric. I mean, it's just very creepy. There's a lot of shots at night with like a ton of fog and like really amazing lighting. I mean, I've seen this movie a ton of times, and I'll be honest, when I watched it in my movie room the other day, I was almost getting a little creeped out, man, when they're, because Ray Lovelock gets, he's outside, and it's very creepy, very atmospheric, really well done. Arthur Kennedy plays an American cop. He was in Fantastic Voyage, The Antichrist, a bunch of other movies. He plays one of the biggest assholes in cinema history because a couple people, because of the zombies, wind up dead, but he's trying to blame our hero, Ray Lovelock. It's great. At one point he's like, he's looking at him, he's like, yeah, you and your faggot hippies friends with your rock and roll and your long hair, and it's just some great, the cop is just so funny. But it's a great flick. This is the last Blu-ray that came out a couple years ago. There's a new triple disc one, which is a 4K remaster, but then dubbed down to Blu-ray. It's an expensive one. It's like $60. It's a steelbook. I'm sure it's worth it, but for myself, I've fallen down that hole too many times, as I'll show you guys in a minute. So I'm like, you know what? You mastered it for 4K. Put it out on 4K, and then I'll buy it again, which I am sure they're going to do. And they did that to Zombie, and I got fucked on that one, which I'll show you in a minute. So, but yeah, either way, you can't go wrong. It's a great zombie flick. Living Dead at the Manchester Morgue, which has a ton of different titles.
I have never seen that.
Neither have I.
It's a thumbs up. And like I said, 1974, because as you guys know, there's not a lot from 68 to 78. There's this, Shockwaves, Death Dream from Bob Clark. Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, also from Bob Clark. I mean, there's not a lot of. I think Living Dead Girl, did that come out before Dawn of the Dead? I mean, there's not a ton, right? There's probably something we're missing. But once Dawn of the Dead came out, and then Zombie right after it, boom.
Yeah, floodgates open at that point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I wanted to mention for Rich was talking about Return of the Living Dead. The one thing that's fascinating is so many people, when they think of zombies and zombie movies, they always think of eating brains and just a line, brains. That came
from that movie.
Pop culture from Return of the Dead.
Right, which I forgot to mention that, yes.
No other movie that, I remember years ago, I got a shirt from Walmart that said something like, the zombies are coming for your brains, but you're safe because you don't have any. I mean, this was not a thing until Return of the Living Dead was probably shown on cable a million times. Yeah.
And you know what, too, is in that movie as well, I forgot to mention, the one special effect that still holds up today is the half woman body on the table when they capture it, and the guy that works at the morgue wants to investigate what's going on with this because they see that they talk. So she starts talking to him, and she says that by eating the brains, it makes them feel better. It's something, I forgot what the exact line is, but they feel better because they're in the process of dying or they're dead.
Right.
So it feels better when they eat people's brains. So the first time the zombie says that is the tar man, when he sees the girl coming down the stairs and he says brains. That's the line.
Yeah. line with the corpse was that it makes the pain go away. So that's why they want to eat the brains, and which again is totally different from the Romero, where you shoot the brain, kill the brain to kill the zombie.
Right. Yeah. But that half woman on the table still, when I watched it again yesterday, it still holds up amazing.
Yeah. Very creepy.
Like CGI could never do that.
Yeah. I mean, that would do it, but it looked like shit.
Yeah, it would. Yep.
Yeah, there's something about using old school special effects for doing films like this.
Yeah.
It's not quite the same with CGI.
Yeah.
Not quite.
That's why we're all talking about movies. Because today it would be all, a lot digital, I should say. Not all.
Yeah.
All right, so my first choice here, Chris mentioned it before, from Bob Clark, 1972's Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. So this is a pretty notorious film, although, it's funny. I've been watching this movie for, a couple decades now, and I rewatched it again recently. And Chris and I were talking about this recently. This is almost like two films in one. It's the movie is about an hour, and it's about an hour and a half, 87 minutes. The first 50 minutes is pretty boring.
Oh yeah,
it's pretty boring. So basically, the plot of this film is that you've got this kind of theater group led by what is his name? Alan is the director, right? It's Alan Ormsby. He's worked a lot with Bob Clark, and he's done a lot of directing and acting and things in various different horror and thriller films over the years. So he's like the kind of ringleader of this group, this theater group, and they decide to take a boat trip out to this island. Where this island is, we really don't know, where apparently a bunch of criminals are buried. Okay. Kind of strange, right? So they go there in hopes that they're going to shoot a movie, right? So they're like, oh, we're going to go see if we can dig up some old corpses and shoot a horror movie. And he's got these real lofty plans of what he wants to do. And he's really full of himself. So right from the beginning, you're like, this guy is a total asshole, because he treats the rest of the crew like shit. And he runs this whole thing like he's Hitler or whatever. So, they go and they dig up this dead body. And surprisingly enough, the body's in really good condition. So they're like, oh, what's going on with this? What have you? Well, little do they know that by digging up that dead body, they've had uncovered a curse. And throughout the first 50 minutes, there's a lot of dialogue and a lot of really bad acting, a lot of atmosphere. I mean, I think Bob Clark did a really good job of making really creepy sets here, but there's just not much happening. And it's not till the guy that they dig up finally comes to life, and then the rest of the dead criminals on the island start coming out of their graves, that things kind of finally pick up. So finally, all of a sudden, you have all these zombies coming out of their graves, right, throughout the island. And of course, what do they want to do? They want to go and kill and eat this theater group that's there. So it's the last probably 35-40 minutes is some pretty inventive kills. I mean, the zombie makeup is okay. It's nothing groundbreaking. I mean, we're talking 72 here. It's probably not even up to Romero Night of the Living Dead standards, but it's not bad. There's some pretty decent gore, but it's not overly gory, but it's really kind of creepy and atmospheric. And it's just one kill after another. So it's one by one, they start, killing the whole theater troupe. And of course, they leave the director guy. He's basically left for last. So, and he's the guy you really want to see killed. And they kind of really push that towards the end. And, without giving away the end of the film, they kind of leave it up to a sequel that never happened, unfortunately. But I would say it's if you love zombie films, it's worth it for the final act, I think, which is really fun and really well done. But the movie's just really tedious for the first kind of 45 minutes or so. But it's if you like atmospheric, creepy settings, it's just the whole film is pretty well done. Obviously, they didn't have much of a budget, but it's still a good time, I think, overall. So if you haven't seen it, Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. Definitely worth checking out as, a decent early zombie film, and one that doesn't really get talked a lot about these days.
Oh, sure. Yep, I have that DVD, Pete, but I dug this up. I know you said maybe to show it. This is the laser disc of.
Wow. Yep.
Wow.
They got this in sometime in the 90s. For anybody that's not old like me, that to know Laserdisc was the grandfather or the father of DVD. Basically, you got the movie was on a giant disc. You had to watch the movie on one side, half on the other side. And yeah, I could definitely say side 2 of Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things got a lot more play than side 1. But when I opened the disc up, I was like, yeah, this was like a limited edition thing. It was kind of like opening a Kiss album. 2 things that were really cool was it came with a reproduction of the original press book from 1972 or 73, and it was autographed by Bob Clark and Alan Armsby, of course. And Bob Clark passed away in, I think, 2007. And it also came with this, which is very cool. They gave this to you in the theater when you saw it back then. This is a reproduction of a death certificate.
That's cool.
X amount of dollars, in case you should die of fright while watching children. So yeah, pretty kind of neat little stuff.
And for those not familiar, Bob Clark went on to do some pretty big things. So he went on to direct, which could be for me one of the greatest early slasher films of all time, Black Christmas. Yes. Great film. And he also did Porky's and A Christmas Story. And the film that Chris mentioned before, there's a Death Dream.
Yep. Also known as I think it's The Night When Andy Came Home, which is very fucking creepy, very atmospheric, and really, I guess, more of a Living Dead movie than a zombie movie, but really it still holds up to this day. Yep. But yeah, how crazy is it that this guy did these amazing, low budget horror movies? I mean, Black Christmas, one of the earliest slashers. They did Porky's, the biggest teen sex comedy of all time, and then did Christmas Story, a movie that gets played for 24 hours straight every Christmas.
Yep.
I mean, that's unbelievable.
What year was Black Christmas? 75, I think.
Hold on, I'll tell you in a second.
It's a couple of years before Halloween, because Halloween gets the credit for being the
74. 74.
74. I was close.
Yeah. I mean, Black Christmas is absolutely terrific.
Yeah. I think we ran that at Hudson Horror. We got a 35 millimeter print of that, and it's another one that really holds up. And another one, I thought the remake was complete shit. And I didn't even second remake. There's another one.
Like what? 2 years later?
Yeah.
I don't understand Hollywood sometimes. It's like, do we really need 2 remakes of a classic, right? The first one was bad enough. I mean, the first remake was bad enough. Let's do it again and do it even worse. I don't understand Hollywood. Don't get it. All right, Rich, back to you.
All right, going to 86 for Night of the Creeps. So this is interesting premise. It's like it's one main plot and 2 subplots inside of it, sort of. Because in the beginning of it, it introduces the aliens in outer space that are doing these experiments. And one of the pods that the experiment's in gets accidentally released and it crashes to Earth. Kind of like the Blob type of a thing, like a meteor, whatever it may be. And after it crashes, when the boy goes to look for the crashed object, whatever it is, this is in 59, it takes place when it starts. When he goes to look for what crashed, the girlfriend that's in the car hears on the radio that there's a killer on the loose. So there's the story of what's happening with the aliens, and then there's the story of where did the killer come from, because then the killer ends up killing her. But at the same time, the boyfriend, when he goes to investigate this pod that crashes, that's where the slug comes out and jumps into his mouth. So that's how the people turn into zombies, is by getting this slug creature that jumps into your mouth. So then after you see that, then you jump to 1986 where this takes place. And you're on a college campus. There's 2 guys that are pledging for one of the fraternities. They have to go to the lab, the science lab, and get a body, because they have a body there. But you don't realize that the body that's in the cryostasis, I guess is the word, right? Yeah, cryostasis, is that body that was the guy that got the slug that jumped into his mouth in 1959. So you got to, follow why the aliens were introduced in the beginning, then what happened with the killer that killed the girlfriend of the guy that got the slug that jumps into his mouth. So after they release this body that they find in the lab, the two kids, the body, the thing, it kind of regenerates his body and he gets up and he walks away. And the slug thing goes out of his mouth and it goes into the teacher that's in the science lab. So he gets up and he walks away. So as the movie's going along, these things are jumping out of people's mouths and going into other people's mouths. And that's how they turn into these zombies. But the funny thing is that like the first, the science teacher, when this first slug jumps into his mouth and he's walking around, nobody realizes that he's a zombie. Like his face is totally made up like a dead guy, and he gets up and walks away and nobody's like paying attention. It's like kind of funny. And this happens throughout the movie like 4 times. So the other part of the plot is the police officer, which is, he's very famous. What's his name again? Tom Atkins,
yeah,
who was in Halloween 3. He's the police officer who's investigating what's going on with what's happening with the fraternity because a body turns up. Through flashbacks, you find out that he was the police officer that arrived on the scene when this happened in '59 with the killer. So he decides to kill the killer, and he buries the killer underneath the fraternity house, if I'm correct. So there's a couple different subplots that are happening here. You have to pay attention to, flashbacks and what happens in the present and what happened in the very beginning of the movie. So the basic premise is these slug things keep on jumping from one person's mouth to another, and people turn into zombies, and they'll kill somebody else, and it'll go into another body. So by the midpoint of the movie, towards the end, when they're having their formal dance, that's when all these slug things have gotten all around the campus, and they've gone into a whole bunch of kids' mouths that are in a bus that are going to the girls' fraternity for the dates. And that's when they all show up, and they all show up at the door, and they're all turned into zombies. And that's when all the chaos starts happening. So it's a little bunch to follow. You got 3 things happening at one time, but towards the end, it all starts to come together. And then when the one lead guy, what's his name? Chris, let's see. Yeah, his name's Chris Romero. His name is Jason Lively, the actor.
Yeah.
So the girl interest that he has in the movie, she has a boyfriend that you learn is like a real jerk. His name was Brad, and his license plate said Bradster. He was a real asshole. So when he gets
anybody with a license plate that says Bradster,
right?
Yeah.
So he gets one of the slugs obviously jumps into his mouth, and he turns into a zombie, and he shows up for the date. But she's really going with Chris Romero because throughout the story, him and the girl, they create this relationship because she sees Brad show up at her window as a zombie, and nobody is believing her. So when he shows up to talk to her, he's totally a dead guy. You ever notice that? Like his makeup, he's all a zombie, and she never looks at him in the face. And she just sits down on the porch and she starts talking to him like he's just a regular guy. So it's funny how this like happens throughout the movie a few times. And Tom Atkins' character, the cop, he says "thrill me" like 7 times. That's the big line that he has in this movie. It's so typical, 80s, right? Phrase, whatever you want to, what do you call that? Catchphrase, right?
Catchphrase, yeah.
The catchphrase, like Arnold Schwarzenegger saying, "I'll be back."
I'll be back.
Things like that. So yeah, towards the end, when the bus crashes and all the boys get out of the bus and they're all turned into the zombies, that's when you're getting to the climax. All the dates show up at the door and everybody starts, running and screaming. And Tom Atkins, he shows up as the cop. And I'm not going to give away the ending of it, but you see the aliens come back. They do come back, and it leaves it open for a sequel because there's actually 2 endings to it. There's the one ending with the dog where the leech jumps into the dog's mouth, and then there's the other one where Tom Atkins' character, the cop, he decides to burn all the slugs, but he actually walks away. I'm not going to tell you what happens, but have you ever seen the 2 endings? Everybody knows the dog ending.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Did you ever see the other
I
ending?
think it's the only one I've seen.
Did you ever see the Atkins ending? What happens there?
So. No.
Yeah, it's on the. I don't know if it's on the DVD, but
it's on this version, the director's cut, because he's in the basement of one of the fraternity houses, and he sets them on fire. But he actually catches on fire too. It's like a Dr. Loomis kind of a thing, and he gets out and he walks away because one of the slugs jump into his mouth as well. It's anyone that's anywhere around these slug things. If it's in someone else's mouth, it always ends up jumping to somebody else's. So the ending, when you watch it, it leaves it open for a sequel. I'm not going to tell you how it ends. So yeah, it's an interesting plot. It's like it's one main plot with two subplots that you got to pay attention to get to the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's a classic. It's funny, got good effects. You know, a cast that you care about, which to me, any kind of zombie movie. I mean, any movie, but especially zombie movies. You know, if you don't care about the cast, then I really don't give a shit if you get eaten or not.
It was good because Atkins. What was I going to say? I just lost my train of thought. It's interesting just because of the three different plots you got going on. You got to follow because it starts off with the aliens, and then it's got the killer and what happens to the killer. Because actually, the killer comes back because of the slugs. If you guys remember that part, because Atkins has to end up killing him. He says, "I already killed you once," because he comes back because the slugs jump into that body's mouth. So yeah,
it's a fun flick.
Yeah, a little different for the time.
I've got to add that to my collection. I actually don't own that one.
Oh
no, this one's good. Get the one that says director's cut on, because then you get the version with the dog.
Yeah, they've got a Blu-ray version that's the director's cut.
Blu-ray, I think it has both versions.
And you got "Thrill Me" on the back, the tagline.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of two. The other one is the good news is your dates are here. The bad news is they're dead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's
very famous line.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, very famous line.
Which again is another one that I think from constant viewing on cable and VHS and then eventually DVD, it just became like, you know, a real cult film.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
I remember I went to like a chiller theater and met the cast, and I can't remember the guy, the name of the actor, but the main lead. There was a girl in front of me getting an autograph, and she said to him, and I'm like, "What is she talking about?" She turns to me and she goes, "Oh, you were my favorite Rusty," and I'm like, "What is that?"
Is that Jason Lively, his character, the main kid with the reddish hair?
And then once I got to his table, I saw he had all these pictures from National Lampoon's European Vacation or Christmas, whichever one.
Oh, he's the second son, or the first son.
That's what she meant when she's like, "You were my favorite Rusty." I'm like, "What is she talking
about?" Yeah, that's right.
Too funny. All right, Chris.
All right. So we're gonna start. This is my second favorite zombie film of all time, and you know, I would argue the second greatest zombie movie of all time. It's quite notorious, and it's amazing how popular it is now. But for many years it wasn't, and it's Lucio Fulci's Zombie. This is the Laserdisc, which came out in 1998. And then let's see. Before I had the laser, I had the VHS, but I couldn't find that. And then Anchor Bay put out the DVD. And
while you're doing that, if you can explain to everybody, why is there Zombie and Zombie 2?
I was just gonna get to that because it represented two on the covers.
Right.
Shrieko did a DVD called Zombie 2 at almost the same exact time. It came out in the UK under the title on Blu-ray from Arrow. This is Zombie Flesh Eaters. Then I had to get the Blu-ray from Blue Underground. This is the 2-disc Ultimate Edition on Blu-ray. You think, wow, the 2-disc Ultimate Edition. I'll never have to buy it again. But then I had to buy the 3-disc Ultimate Edition from Blue Underground, and they were like, "Oh, it's a brand 4K remaster.
So that's the one that I have, except I have the one with the bridge cover.
Right. Yeah. There was
bridge
like,
scene.
just like comic books, you guys know. They
variant covers.
Variant covers, but this was a 4K remaster dumbed down to a Blu-ray, and then of course I had to have the true ultimate version of Zombie and 4K UHD, which is the newest version. It came out I don't know 6-7 months ago, and it looks unbelievable.
So Chris, I got to ask you. So how much better does it look than the one that I have?
It's definitely an improvement for sure. I mean, it's like, I want to listen to an Iron Maiden record. Do you want to listen to it on, cassette or the vinyl? It's definitely an improvement. I mean, when you come over, if you want to do a comparison, we definitely can. It sucks because I never even watched this. I bought this, and then a couple months later, I had to buy it again on 4K. I'm like, bitch. And the only thing that this has, that this doesn't have, this has the CD, the soundtrack CD.
Right.
But I already have the soundtrack CD like 3 times. So, so first off, to answer Rich's question, the movie Dawn of the Dead was put together by Dario Argento and George Romero. The deal was Argento put up a ton of money. In exchange for that, he got European film rights, and he also got the right to cut the movie however he wanted. So he actually beat the States because Argento did his own cut of Dawn of the Dead, got it out in movie theaters in Europe in 1978. It's very different from the U.S. Dawn of the Dead. For whatever reason, he called the movie Zombie in Europe, and it was released in the UK as Zombies, Dawn of the Dead, which doesn't make any sense, but that's what he did. So Lucio Fulci was hired to do a zombie movie, and the gimmick was they were going to try and almost push it off as a prequel to Dawn of the Dead. So they made this movie, which I think the original working title was Island of the Living Dead. But in Europe, the copyright laws are shit. It's not like in America. So to do a real cash grab on Dawn of the Dead, which again was called Zombie in Europe, they said, fuck it. Let's put this movie out and call it Zombie 2. That'll really confuse the shit out of people. And some people will go, this was used as the Italian Locandina, which is the...
Yeah, I have that version.
Yeah. So it was called Zombie 2 in Europe, but there was no zombie it was called Zombies Dawn of the Dead, so they retitled it Zombie Flesh Eaters for England. When it came to America, they weren't going to call it Zombie 2 because Dawn of the Dead was just Dawn of the Dead over here, so they just titled it Zombie, and it actually worked. I mean, the numbers are not 100% known, but there's a lot of people that claim Zombie made more money in America than Dawn of the Dead. And the tagline for in all the newspapers for Zombie was, if you loved Dawn of the Dead, you'll just eat up Zombie. And it worked. It was a fucking huge hit. Fulci's biggest movie in the States. Real quick, if you haven't seen it, it's a fucking 5-star classic. Gennaro De Rossi, who did the makeup for Manchester Morgue, does the makeup here. Very, very gory. Ian McCulloch, who starred in Dr. Butcher, stars in this movie. Tisa Farrow, who's what's her name? Mia Farrow's younger and prettier sister, is the female lead. And it starts like every zombie or cannibal movie from Italy in the 80s. Starts in New York, and Ian McCulloch and Tisa Farrow meet up. Her dad is in some small island in the Caribbean, and she wants to go down there, and they go down there on this boat to look for him. And of course, there's fucking zombies everywhere. Shit happens. People get ripped apart. It's got an amazing score from Fabio Frizzi, one of my favorite soundtracks ever. It's tight. It's like 89 minutes. You know, some people think it drags a little bit in the first half, but man, it's got two of the most iconic scenes in the history of horror cinema. One is on Olga Karlatov, who's a hot actress. She's looking out. Zombie is beating on her door, and the wood breaks, and the zombie reaches in, grabs her by the hair, and slowly forces her face into this large spike of wood. And camera does not cut away. You see all the agony of her face slowly going into the eyeball. And then, of course, the other famous scene is Zombie versus Shark, when there's a diver in full zombie makeup and a bull shark, granted a drugged bull shark, but it's still a live bull shark. It's no mechanicals. And the zombie and the shark, of course, this isn't too long after the Jaws movies, have a fight underwater. Totally insane. Doesn't make any sense, but who cares? Probably the craziest scene in the history of zombie cinema. And there's a ton of other shit that happens too, but it's a great flick. There's a bunch of quasi sequels that are really sequels in name only, and they all suck. But this is my favorite Fulci film and my second favorite zombie movie. And Fulci was on a run for the next 4 or 5 movies of just unbelievable flicks. City of the Living Dead, The Beyond, House by the Cemetery, New York Ripper. I mean, just, you know, home run after home run as far as, you know, Italian Euro horror.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all those films are great. All of them.
That shark scene is the most crazy scene you've seen until you've seen the movie that I told you guys about that I worked on, Nightmare at Shallow Point. Wait until you see that Nightmare at Shallow Point and you see some ridiculousness. It beats the shark versus zombie.
I can't wait to see that. It's like, geez.
I know. I got to transfer it to DVD so I can give it to you guys.
Awesome.
It's ridiculous. It's so silly and so much fun. It's just, I think it beats the shark versus zombie scene.
Give me 1 second, Pete. I got a custom zombie figure I'm looking for.
Cool. You got it. All right. Well, while Chris is looking for that, I will talk about my number 2 pick here. So we're going to go to 1977. So we're all kind of like in the same, you know, time period here. So this is a Ken Wiederhorn film from 77, Shockwaves.
Oh, yeah. That's a cool
So, you know, I mean, Chris talked about on a previous episode of The Monsters Den about Kung Fu zombies. There's been all sorts of wacky zombie films where here you've got underwater swimming Nazi zombies, right?
Nice.
Never thought you'd see that, right? So this has got a really good cast. So, you know, not only does it have John Carradine, okay, classic actor from 30s, 40s, and 50s. You got Peter Cushing, classic Hammer actor. You've got the lovely Brooke Adams, who's in like this, you know, nice little yellow bikini throughout the whole movie. You've got, who else we got here on the cast? You've also got Fred Butch, Jack Davidson, Luke Halpin. Luke Halpin is a pretty popular actor as well. DJ Sidney and Don Stout kind of makes up the main cast. So basically, this is another one of those kind of like bunch of people on a tourist ship going, they think they're going somewhere, right? They wind up going to this island. They kind of like crash land at this island that happens to be inhabited by these pretty cool looking Nazi zombies with sunglasses. They all wear sunglasses. So this whole film is like, they're like, you know, they're on this island, they're exploring the island, trying to figure out what's going on. They stumble across like Peter Cushing, who's this old like Nazi general, and he's on the island. He's kind of in control of these zombies, but not really. And then of course, one by one, the zombies start picking off the you know, people from this tourist boat one by one. And it's actually, you know, it's funny because the first time you watch this film, you kind of think how like kind of far-fetched it is. But the more you watch it, you realize there's a lot of art going on in this movie. And I think the camera work is excellent. The acting is very good. Really good cast here. And the cinematography is just excellent. It's just really kind of atmospheric and like bleak type of film. But like the underwater scenes are amazing. So you've got like these Nazi zombies like walking on the ocean floor underneath, you know, coming, and the tight camera work of these zombies coming like above water. is really, really striking because they're so calm. They're not running. They're not, you know, stumbling around like the normal zombies. They're very like kind of calculating in the way that they lumber around. And, you know, it's really weird because like, you know, throughout the whole movie, trying, how do we kill these zombies? How do we kill these? And then you find out, well, you kill them by taking off their sunglasses. So then they have to look into the sunlight and that eventually kills them, which a little hokey, all right, but
you gotta do something different, I guess.
That explains why they're wearing the damn sunglasses, right?
Yeah.
So, and a really cool like final like half hour of the film with some pretty cool kills. It's not a bloody movie by any means. It's more of kind of like a cold and calculating type of thing. Very atmospheric film. Really good camera work. The acting is great, and it's got Peter Cushing in it for crying out loud, so you can't go wrong there. Brooke Adams is great in this. John Carradine plays a good role here as well. And really, really good film. This is one of those movies that the more you watch it, the more you appreciate kind of like all that went into it. So this is definitely a different type of zombie movie. Have we ever had like Nazi zombies before? I don't think so.
Once, and I was thinking of this when you showed that.
It was
Dead Snow.
Oh, Zombie Lake. That's right. Yes, I forgot about that.
You read my mind. Dead Snow.
Yep.
Wow.
Definitely.
But very good, and it's definitely kind of creepy. Definitely creepy.
Yeah, great flick, and there should be more Nazi zombie movies. I mean, it's definitely unique and creepy.
Yeah, really, really good. Again, a little bit different from the normal zombie fare. Not a lot of gore here at all, but definitely really cool. It's kind of like, you know, who's going to get it next. And what's really cool is like you never know when these zombies are going to appear, because as you know, mostly when you're watching these classic zombie films, you know, you see them lumbering from a mile away, right? They're coming at you, they're doing their thing. Here you don't know where they're going to turn up, and all of a sudden, you know, you could be sitting somewhere, there's water nearby, and all of a sudden you see the head of one of them with the sunglasses come up above you behind the water, and then boom, you're done. They pull you under, and that's that. So pretty cool. Very different type of film, but I dig it a lot. Like I said, I watched it again recently, and I'm really growing a really cool appreciation of this film. I think it holds up really, really well.
Yeah, it definitely helped out. Now, Ken Wiederhorn, to tie it into Rich's first pick, directed one of the worst zombie movies ever, Return of the Living Dead Part 2, which is just fucking awful. I tried to watch it about a year ago.
It's not like this.
No, it's not.
I literally turned it off after about 45 minutes. I'm like, I can't take it. It's awful.
But you know what's good about this too, and the zombies, they're not the slow lumbering ones. They're really fast in this one.
That could be
even though they're dead and they have their rigor mortis that's set in and everything. Even with Freddy, the main guy, as soon as he completely dies and he turns into the zombie, he's off going after everybody. He's like nuts. So that's we all kind of picked like movies that are different twists on what the zombies were previously, you know?
Yep. All right, Rich, what do you got next?
All right, going to 2010 and The Crazies, which this came out in theaters. I saw this in movies. Yep. So this takes place in Iowa. Starts off like a regular day with a baseball game happening. And there's a guy that walks onto the field and he's got a shotgun. So the cops, they don't know how to deal with it. The two cops that are on the scene. When he gets close enough, he raises the shotgun like he's going to kill one of them, and they shoot him dead. So they take the body back, and they don't know what's wrong. They don't know why he got this way. So the whole movie unfolds like that, where people are just getting sick. It's like kind of like a pandemic, right? And nobody knows what's going on. Nobody knows why anybody's getting sick, and people are going crazy. So people are just going crazy and trying to kill people, and there's no rhyme or reason why it's happening. But as the movie's progressing, you see the satellite up in the sky looking down on the town and taking down information, so you know that the military has something to do with the government, and they're watching what's happening. So eventually they do show up, and there's a whole quarantine section where they take the people that have been infected and they have them on the beds. And that's where the one famous scene is. If you guys remember the one body that walks around with the pitchfork, he starts killing all the bodies that are laying on the table that are still alive. Yeah. And they still have their wits about them. They're still like they're like the living dead. They're still alive, but they're sick. So they're still able to communicate. Like the cop that kills the man that was on the baseball field in the beginning, his wife and his son, when they become sick, they go after the police officer during the movie and they actually talk to him. So they're speaking zombies that are somewhere between being a complete, dead corpse and a completely living person. So their makeup is deteriorated a little bit, like their veins are popping out of their face and things like that. So they're not completely dead and not completely alive. And then the whole movie goes throughout, everybody starts getting sick in the town, all the chaos starts happening, and the military are trying to quarantine people in the process. So it's it's cool. It's got some tension to it. It's a good movie.
So I've never seen this version, so I'm assuming this is a direct remake of the Romero original.
I haven't seen that in so long. Is it very close to it?
Well, based on what you're describing, it sounds pretty similar.
It is similar, and I like both movies. I've seen them both in theaters. I got them both on disc. The problem with the American, the remake, the modern remake, is in the original. There's a great subplot about the government being totally fucked up, and the government trying to come up with a cure, and just all the ways our government fails us in a time of an unbelievable health crisis.
We're living in it right now.
We're living in it, right. But in this movie, actually the government does say that they're doing this. It was an experiment in population control that went crazy. That's what they say in this. That's what they say in this version. I don't remember about the original one.
Right. Yeah. I forget what the cause was in the in the original. But the whole point of the crazies was it was the government trying to solve things and totally fucking things up.
Right.
But that was completely eliminated from the remake. And I talked to George Romero about it, and he was like, "Yeah, they completely missed the plot. That was the crux of the story, that the government's always going to fail us," which he talks about in the running commentary for Dawn of the Dead, because the same situation there. And of course, like you just said, now we're living in it, and Romero was right on the nose, on the nose, all these 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I remember thinking, I like the original, but I remember thinking it seemed a little tame at the time, based on other films that he was doing.
Yeah, it was cheap. It was definitely a low budget, but you could see how it's almost a zombie movie without being flesh-eating zombie. It's very, it's very close.
Yeah, this isn't flesh-eating. These are people that are just, as they get sick throughout the movie, they just go crazy and they try and kill other people.
Right. Which I'm sure.
But they still have, like I said, they still have their conscience about them, and they still know what they're doing, but they don't know why they're doing it because they're sick from this. So, yeah. Cool.
I'm gonna have to check that one out. I haven't seen that one. I remember when it came out though.
And it's got a similar kind of ending. You have the two main leads, the husband and the wife, and they survive, and they do the town. Well, the government eliminates the area, thinking that they're going to contain it, but obviously they're not by doing it. Same premise with Return of the Living Dead too. Remember, they destroy that part of the town. They do the same thing in the Crazies by the end. But
did anybody notable direct that film?
Breck Eisner. Never heard of him. It says he's an American television and film director. Doesn't say what though. I don't know. Yeah, starring Timothy Oliphant, which I know his name.
Oh, he's awesome. Yeah, he's from Deadwood and Justified. Yeah, Tim Oliphant's great.
Yeah.
And I know the girl too. I know her face. Rada Amber.
No, I don't know.
Australian
if
actress.
He's in it. I got to check it out because I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah,
Pitch Black. That's where I know her from. Pitch Black. Pitch Black.
Pitch Black. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's got two rather known actors at that time for 2010.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they went with the Crazies remake because another movie that's very similar, 28 Days Later, where
that's right.
But that was a huge hit, and then they did the second was 28 Weeks Later, I think, or
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's how a Zombies remake got greenlit and put in theaters. But yeah, not a bad movie.
What was in 28 Days Later? What was the? I forgot. It's been a while. What's the story with the zombies in there? Like this one, I said they're half conscious, but they're half dead. They're somewhere in between.
Well, wait till my turn, and we'll talk all about that.
Oh, all right, cool.
That's my third pick. All right, Chris, go for it.
So yeah, the thing I was grabbing, because there's not a ton of like toys from Fulci Zombie, but this was a custom made action figure that I got from somebody. But
wow, that's so cool.
Wow.
Nice job on the figure. Even comes with like actual moss. So that was a cool piece I got from Zombie.
Very nice.
The movie is terrible, but I love it for some reason. And this is the reason why when sometimes when I think movies suck, I keep buying them in the hopes that I will eventually fall in love, and that's what happened with this one. I rented it in, I don't know, like 83, 84, and I'm like, this movie kind of sucks, but I eventually kept watching it. Then I bought the VHS, and then I bought it now multiple times on home video, and it's Dr. Butcher, MD, Medical Deviant.
Never saw it.
It's really, oh god, it really needs to be seen. It's basically a mashup of a zombie movie, a cannibal movie, and a mad scientist movie, all wrapped into one. It's heavily influenced by Fulci Zombie. This was put into production not long after that. Stars Ian McCulloch, who starred in Zombie. His character name is Peter in both movies. There's a black henchman that works for Dr. Butcher. He was the henchman for the main doctor in Zombie, and they actually even use some of the same locations from Zombie in Dr. Butcher. But it's very gory. Donald O'Brien, who starred in Emmanuel and Last Cannibals, which I reviewed for Pete like a week or two ago. He's unbelievable as this maniacal fucking doctor. And long story short, yeah, it's a zombie movie, but you find out, spoiler alert, 40 years later, he's doing these experiments on the cannibals and turning them into zombies for some reason. I don't know why. Why not just enslave the cannibals? Because they sort of do his bidding and they sort of don't always. It's a really fucking stupid movie because, like, in the beginning, the cannibals are going around and, cannibalizing and eating people. But then the zombies come to rescue our heroes from the cannibals. But so you're like, oh, are the cannibals good guys? Because I just saw them eat some of the good guys. But then then the zombies take over, and then the cannibals come to rescue our heroes from the zombies. So I don't know. The movie's a fucking mess, but it's terrible. But I love it. But yeah, this is the Laserdisc from 1989 from Japan. Then I got a few years later. Oh yeah, there's two versions of this. The European version was called Zombie Holocaust, and this is the German Laserdisc, which was a gatefold, and it had
very nice.
Yeah, the female lead. Why can't I think of her name? She starred in Fulci's New York Ripper. But yeah, this came with some posters. Then of course Dr. Butcher came on DVD, so I had to buy the DVD. But this only has the Dr. Butcher version. So then when I went to Europe to see Iron Maiden, well, then I had to get Zombie Holocaust. But then the ultimate version really is the from a couple, like 2-3 years ago, the double disc Blu-ray, which has both versions on separate discs. I forgot one of the discs. And hours of fucking extras, more extras than you'd ever want to know about this movie. And the limited edition version did come with a limited edition vomit bag. It is extremely gory and extremely violent. If you like Italian, zombies and Italian cannibals, this is for you. The reason they changed the title was in Europe, cannibal movies were big business. There was Cannibal Holocaust, Jungle Holocaust. So zombie Holocaust, let's put zombies and cannibals. That's great. But when Terry Levine in America went to get the distribution, he did not get the rights to the title. So he had to change the title to Dr. Butcher. He had to use a different title sequence. And really, Dr. Butcher, I think, is a better title. And there was, Cannibal Holocaust barely got released in the States. Jungle Holocaust got retitled. So to call it Zombie Holocaust anyway, probably wouldn't have worked. But it's fucking an awful movie. But I something about it. I mean, I watched it twice recently, last week, both versions, and yeah, they're really not that many differences. The score is different in both flicks. There's an extra scene in Dr. Butcher, and I thought there was one scene missing in Zombie Holocaust, but then when I went and watched it, I'm like, oh no, there it is. So I don't know, but it's, if you've never seen it, if you like, violent Italian horror flicks, it's a must-have.
So bad it's good, right?
I forgot to mention when I was talking about Night of the Creeps. Do you guys remember? There's two little Easter eggs that are in the bathroom scene. When the kid is in the bathroom and he sets the one leech on fire that's on the ground. Do you remember in the 80s, you used to always write shit all over the bathroom walls?
Yeah.
There was always call so-and-so for a good time and all that kind of crazy shit. So you guys remember the two little Easter eggs that are written on the wall in the bathroom? One of them says, "Go Monster Squad."
Oh, right. Yeah, because it's the same director.
And it says Striper rules, right? When the kid's sitting when he's sitting on the toilet on top of the toilet paper, it says Striper rules. So there's a little bit more metal in a horror movie.
Nice.
There you go.
That's awesome.
All right. Last but not least, this is the most recent film I believe we're going to talk about today. No, maybe not. But 2002. So Rich mentioned 28 Days Later. This is got both films here in the series. So this is like your more modern zombie films do this kind of post-apocalyptic type thing. And, again, I mentioned 2002. So this is 18 years ago. So this is pre-Walking Dead comic book and Walking Dead show. But when you watch this now, today, after we've all seen the Walking Dead show, I mean, the whole first half hour of this film is Walking Dead completely took everything from this.
Yeah.
I mean, you have this guy, Cillian Murphy, who's he's done a lot of acting. He's played the Scarecrow in the Batman films and everything. So he's in a hospital. He's all by himself. He's like, how did I get here? There's nobody around. He goes outside. Streets are all empty. He's wandering around and all this kind of stuff. It's almost like scene for scene, the first episode of The Walking Dead.
Walking Dead, yeah.
Right. So, but we talked about the Crazies before. So this film is kind of like a perfect mashup of the classic zombie film and something like the Crazies, where it's a virus, an infection. So in here, they don't call any of the living dead zombies. They call them the infected. So there's this virus. They don't really explain too much how it came to be. But when you get infected, you turn into this crazy, maniacal, rabid, it's almost like a rabid dog. It's almost like rabies, right? You turn into this savage, right? That all you want to do is kill.
That was in, sorry, not to interrupt you. It was in, that was also the story, the premise in Quarantine.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
In the apartment building.
Right. So this whole film is it's not so much about the zombies or the infected. It's more about the survivors, and you get to know a few of them. They all come together, him, and there's this woman, and there's this family they meet up with, and eventually there's this military group that they stumble upon. So again, there's a lot of similarities to other films we've seen, but here they are trying to escape and get away from these really fast, frothing at the mouth zombies that just and that's really with the infected. And really that's, you know, when they do have all of the interactions with these, and you almost can't even really call them dead people because they're not dead. They're still alive. They're just infected. And when they're infected, it's kind of like a human rabies. And they're fast and they're not that stupid either, right? They kind of know what they're doing. And, you know, yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of like, it's a really bleak film. Both of these films are really bleak, but I think they play upon the kind of human spirit and the whole human survival factor type of thing, and how in the midst of this apocalypse, you can find like-minded people and persevere. But of course, then, you know, this small group finds these military guys who are housed up somewhere, and they think, okay, there's our saviors are here. But then the military guys turn out to be pretty much assholes, right? And they do some not so good things. And so it's more, again, it's kind of like a story of survival, kind of like The Walking Dead. But it's funny, when you watch both of these films, you realize how much the creators of the Walking Dead series actually took, not only from Romero's films, but from these as well, I think, right? Really well done, very well acted, really well acted. You know, it's basically all British cast. So, but I think this is like modern day kind of, it's gritty, but it's kind of classy in a weird way. And it's a very artful, especially the first film. The second film was decent, but the first one's the best of the two. Kind of artful and really well shot. Yeah. Really well shot. The cinematography is fantastic. So I don't know if you guys want to add any color commentary to that, but I dig these films quite a bit.
Yeah, I definitely dug both of those movies. Got them both on disc, saw them both in the theaters, and
yeah, so same here.
I enjoyed the second one because it was more money, so it was a bigger scope. You know, them running loose in the whole city, and there was a ton of action.
Yeah,
but yeah, I like both of those movies. I think
the second film is more violent by far. Yeah,
the second one has a lot more action, and I can't remember if it was ever mentioned in the movie or if it was just in the horror magazines. But I think they called it the Rage virus, if I remember right.
Yes, yeah.
And it was really scary because it was like all you needed was like a drop of blood to get in you. You didn't have to get bit. You could get a drop of blood in your eye or in your mouth, and you instantly changed. It was like not like a traditional zombie movie.
There was no waiting period, right? Yeah.
No waiting period. Like, oh, we could hang out with Rich for another 2-3 days before we have to chop his head off. But Rich gets that drop of blood, boom, he's on us like white on rice.
Yeah, if your buddy got anything like any kind of scratch or something like that, you'd have to kill him instantly because otherwise, you know, yeah.
Yeah. So those good flicks for sure.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So there you have it, everybody. 9 zombie sort of recommendations for you here today. All sorts of good stuff. I think based on this show, I realized that I need to check out a couple of the films that Chris talked about because I haven't seen 2 of them, and I need to add Night of the Creeps to my collection. So,
and I got one more piece of trivia before we go. We were talking about metal before in the movies, and there's no real actors that are leads in the movies, but we're talking about songs, right? So, do you guys know what song was in Phenomena from Dario Argento?
Flash of the Blade from Iron Maiden, and there was also
Flash of the Blade from Iron Maiden.
Yeah, isn't there also a Motorhead song in there too?
What's that?
Isn't there also a Motorhead song in?
Yes, I don't remember which one, but I remember Flash of the Blade because I loved it because they picked a deep cut that it wasn't a popular song or a single.
Yeah, Dario Argento directed that, and he is a massive metal fan. And he produced the movie Demons. He had Motley Crue and Saxon and Scorpions on the soundtrack. And then when he did his final trilogy in the Mothers, it was I forget what I think it was called The Third Mother. And he specifically asked Danny Filth to write the title track and record. Cradle of Filth did the title song. So yeah, Argento is a massive, or at least he was a massive metal fan until the early 2000s anyway. And I remember asking Danny Filth in an interview. I was like, because I hadn't seen The Third Mother yet. I'm like, that's so cool. He's like, I was so honored to be asked personally by Dario Argento. I was like, how's the movie? He's like, are we rolling? I'm like, yeah. He goes, you can't publish this. I go, sure. He goes, it's fucking awful. He goes, this movie's terrible. I was like, really? He's like, yeah. Don't publish that. So then a little while after I watched it, I'm like, that is right. This movie's awful.
I've never seen it, but I've heard it's terrible. I've
never seen it either.
Love, 70s and 80s Argento, but whew,
yeah, unfortunately, Dario hasn't really done a good film in quite a long time.
Back to the 3D was another complete shitter. He's done. I can't remember them all, but
yeah, I'm trying to think what the last really good. I mean, Opera was good.
I loved Opera.
Sleepwalker's pretty good.
I like Stendhal Syndrome. I thought that was pretty good.
That's pretty out there.
And he was like a sewing machine that cut your head off. It was really strange. But yeah, he started to really, like all these guys, no different than the metal bands. I mean, when you're young and hungry, you're doing cool stuff, and then when you're an old man and you got some money, it's like whatever.
Yeah, yeah, that does happen to a lot of them. You're right.
Yep, exactly. All right, everybody. So you know the drill. So if you're watching and you've listened to all we've had to say and all these great films where we've been talking about, if there's any really cool zombie films that you think we might have missed, and we're talking about some of the more underground stuff, feel free to put them in the comments below. We'll be looking at those comments, and we'd love to get some recommendations of films we've never seen before. Although I have a feeling that Chris has probably seen every zombie film that's ever been made, but you never know.
Until you've seen Nightmare at Child Point.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
It's so hard to find. It's on IMDb though.
Okay.
And I'm credited as a makeup artist, so
I'll have to look for that one.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna get you guys a copy. I got to make a copy of it.
Cool. I'll watch it. I will certainly watch it.
You guys will die laughing.
There you go. There you go. All right, everybody. So we'll be back with another Monsters Den episode this coming Thursday evening with Chris Allo once again, and Dan Brown from The Warehouse, who hasn't been on the channel in quite a while, but he's also a big zombie fan. We're going to be talking all about Dawn of the Dead and the various releases that have come out in recent years, or in total. But more importantly, Chris is going to talk about the new 4K collection that has come out recently. So that's coming up this Thursday. We'll have more Monsters Den coming up in the weeks ahead, so stay tuned and visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Got more music stuff happening. Martin Popoff coming back on the show on Friday for a ranking the albums of Accept. Cool. And all sorts of stuff coming up. And Rich, what are we doing this weekend?
Overkill.
Overkill, that's right. It's our 10 favorite albums of Overkill, so that's happening this weekend. And of course, Chris every Monday night with the Hudson Valley Squares coming up this coming Monday night. So stay tuned for that, and all sorts of other things happening on the channel. So for Chris Allo and Rich Catino, I'm Pete Pardo. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.